Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a massive shift in how we handle API testing and orchestration. I mean, if you've ever spent hours writing, maintaining, or just debugging brittle API test scripts, get ready for a serious aha moment. We're going to look at how Postman Flows completely replaces script-heavy, linear testing with this seamless, highly visual canvas. You'll literally see how to automate complex, multi-step workflows without writing a single line of code. Okay, let's dive right into this. We really need to start by addressing a universal pain point. For years, API testing has been kind of stuck in this frustrating loop of manual debugging and testing bottlenecks. Developers and QA engineers are spending way more time fixing test scripts and figuring out why a sequence failed than they are actually building new features. It's a huge bottleneck, and it's costing teams countless hours. To understand just how deep this problem goes, the 2025 State of the API report tells a pretty grim story. I mean, despite all the buzzwords and incredible advancements in AI, our core testing maturity has barely moved. Documentation issues have persistently worsened, actually climbing to 58%. And contract testing adoption? Totally stagnant. It crawled from 15% in 2021 to just 17% today. So the tools got flashier, sure, but the fundamental pain points? They stayed exactly the same. So here's our roadmap for today's explainer. First, the manual testing bottleneck. Second, flows versus collections. Third, building a basic flow. Fourth, adding conditional logic. And finally, a real-world support scenario. Section 1, the manual testing bottleneck and why AI and scale broke old methods. APIs are now the execution layer for AI systems, right? They're running autonomously at machine speed. So the crucial point here is that a mere 17% adoption rate for contract testing is a massive vulnerability. When AI agents rely on stable contracts, even a single undocumented field creates these cascading failures. If testing isn't robust, autonomous systems just stall out completely. And this brings us to a really powerful quote directly from the report. API growth has outpaced API understanding. The sheer volume and speed of API development have just exploded, but our visibility and collaboration around testing? Completely fragmented. What was supposed to be a shared system of record has essentially turned into a scavenger hunt for knowledge across siloed docs and outdated test scripts. Section 2, Flows versus Collections, the paradigm shift in testing. For years, the collection runner was the standard. And look, it's great for linear, sequential execution of requests, but it's super script heavy, and the test definitions are often locked in a UI workspace. That makes them incredibly hard to review in a pull request. Postman Flows represents a massive paradigm shift. Instead of sequential scripts, Flows gives you this visual, branching, composable workflow. And crucially, it supports native Git workflows. That means your visual tests can live right in your repository as diffable, reviewable code artifacts. Let's break down these core features. Flows gives you an infinite visual drag-and-drop canvas. You build with modular, reusable logic blocks instead of writing custom JavaScript for every single assertion. It allows for parallel execution paths, meaning you can hit multiple endpoints at exactly the same time. And with that native Git workflow integration, you can run these flows locally right in your CI pipeline. This isn't just a UI update, folks. It's a completely new way to empower both developers and non-coders to orchestrate data seamlessly. Section 3, Building a Basic Flow. We're automating login, fetch, and validate. Building this out actually involves just 3 simple blocks. First, we use an HTTP request block to authenticate against our service and grab a token. Second, we use a select block to extract that specific token from the response and pass it to our next endpoint call to get the user data. And finally, we route the data to a display block to visually validate that we successfully fetched and checked that specific field. It is entirely modular. Just picture it for a second. You drag your HTTP request block over and you visually connect it, feeling that satisfying snap, right into the select block. As soon as you hit run, you don't have to go digging through console logs. You instantly see the data flowing through the connecting lines, and the display block lights up with your live API output right there in real time. It's instant gratification and, honestly, ultimate visibility. Section 4, Adding Conditional Logic, Routing Data Based on Responses. Now, what's really interesting here is the if block. In Flows, it acts as a binary logical gate. You feed it a condition, and it evaluates it as true or false. Based entirely on that live result, it automatically routes your API payload through either a then port or an else port. No code required.
Practically speaking, here's how you use it to instantly separate success from failure. You set the condition. If the HTTP status equals 200, route the data to the then port to continue the happy path workflow. But if it's anything else, like a 404 or a 500 error, route it to the else port. From that else port, you could trigger a secondary block to log the error, or even send a Slack alert. You've just built robust error handling, entirely visually.
When you zoom in during a live run, it's actually incredibly satisfying to watch. You see the HTTP response hit the if block. The block evaluates the status code, and you actively watch the line representing the then or else path light up as the data dynamically routes itself. You can inspect exactly what each step received and produced at a single glance.
Section 5. Real-world support scenario. Scaling automation across batches.
Imagine a support engineer gets a ticket. They need to verify the subscription status for a batch of 10 different user IDs. Doing this manually means running a request, changing the ID, running it again, and copy and pasting the results 10 separate times. It's so tedious and error-prone. But we can solve this in literally minutes using flows and a mock API, like the public fake store API. And this brilliantly illustrates the power of the for-loop block. First, we input our list of 10 user IDs. We feed that list directly into a for block. Now, here is a fantastic feature. When you create a for block, it automatically adds a collect block for you. The for block iterates through the API calls, and the collect block neatly aggregates all the responses back together.
It really is pure visual magic. The for block seamlessly processes each of the 10 user IDs, one by one. It hits the API, uses an if block to check the subscription status, and then passes the data to the collect block. In seconds, instead of all that manual clicking, the support engineer has one clean, organized output array of all the valid subscriptions. It takes the pain out of operational checking completely.
This perfectly encapsulates the ultimate value proposition of this tool. Turn your APIs into business workflows anyone can follow. By replacing ambiguous, hidden code with visual blocks, Postman Flows completely democratizes complex API orchestration. Whether you're a senior developer mapping out microservices or a support engineer validating accounts, the logic is clear, reviewable, and accessible to everyone.
Which leaves us with one final thought to ponder. We've seen how easy it is to replace rigid scripts with dynamic, visual workflows. If API orchestration is now this visual, this intuitive, and this accessible, what manual testing bottleneck are you going to automate today? The canvas is waiting. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and happy building.